Welcome back. Well, the debate continues over taxes for the new city of St. George. Some leaders say there's still some confusion, while others disagree. In a new letter, Baton Rouge Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome points out multiple things she says St. George leaders need to clarify. One being their official incorporation date. She says if they choose July 1st, it won't set them far back. But St. George officials say it will remain October 12th, 2019. However, both parties say they have agreed to continue working together to come to a clear understanding.
We need it to work for not just for the city of St. George, but for East Baton Rouge Parish. And we've started the process. So the idea that we haven't begun, or we haven't had meetings, or we haven't had conversations, that's a false narrative. Those things are happening.
Mayor Broome also concerned about a 2% sales tax St. George leaders are requesting from the city parish. But she says St. George doesn't have much authority in that decision. Over the weekend, Mylar balloons were cited as the reason many residents in New Orleans were without power. It was the second balloon incident in a week to cause power outages. LBJ has that story.
The big thing about Mylar balloons is it's metallic in nature, and so with it having that metallic composition, it's conductive. And so when you have balloons like that, if you do a balloon release or something like that, it can actually bridge the gap or the spacing that we have from one conductor to another, allowing for a fall to occur.
Entergy New Orleans Director of Reliability Shelton Hudson on how damages of Mylar balloons are happening to our power lines. Balloon releases are most commonly associated with memorials, predominantly in the black community, as a means of grieving a loved one.
They're looking for some form of relief to any form. And historically in this community, you know, it's music and dancing in the street and the repast and everything else. But now this phenomenon of the balloon release has really developed in the last 15 years.
Louis Charbonnet of the Charbonnet Funeral Home says that the releases of doves and butterflies for loved ones is a tradition that goes back even further, but are more expensive options and offer limited participation.
When they do a dove release, you see, that's usually directly on the family. Where Mylars come in is everybody goes out and buy Mylars. In other words, when the cousins go out and buy Mylars or the friends buy Mylars.
This glut of balloons often ends up in our waterways and affecting our ecology. Former WGNO meteorologist Martha Spencer is an offshore fish captain out of Venice, and she sounded the alarm for years.
I would say that 90% of any trash that I see offshore, other than things that form up on rip lines, are balloons. You know, we'll be driving and we'll see something shiny, whether it be one balloon or 10 balloons, they all float and they become problems not only for the boats, but for the wildlife.
The Audubon Aquarium identified the wildlife affected.
Birds, sea turtles, even things as large as a whale can ingest them. And so we're seeing animals get entangled in balloons, but also eat them, which can have deadly effects.
Both Virginia and Florida have outlawed the intentional release of balloons, and lawmakers locally are now talking about what can be done to protect our infrastructure and wildlife.
We can't have the system going out because of one thing. I can't control squirrels or birds or wildlife, but the Mylar is something we have a conversation about how we find the appropriate place so this doesn't keep on happening to us.
That was LBJ reporting. President Biden and the First Lady visited New Orleans this week to talk about funding for important cancer research. A recap after the break.